Hello, welcome to this presentation on presentation basics. My name is Caitlin, and I'm a consultant at the University of Mary Washington Speaking Center. Let's get started. In this presentation, I will be covering the basics of giving a speech, how to present in a group, visual aids, communication apprehension, and how to give a virtual presentation. Our first topic is speech basics. Let's dive right into it. Some basic parts of giving a speech include the structure of the speech, verbal and nonverbal communication, and practicing it. Let's start with talking about how a speech is structured. A speech has three main parts to its structure: the introduction, body, and conclusion. This is the same structure used when writing most essays, but giving a speech is slightly different. The introduction to a speech grabs the audience's attention, making them want to listen to what you're about to tell them. The introduction also explains why they should be listening to you. It answers questions like, why is this relevant? Or why should I trust you? Building credibility could be as simple as what I did in the beginning of this presentation. I stated that I am a consultant at the Speaking Center. You can trust what I'm telling you because I have been trained and have knowledge about the topic. The introduction also includes an overview of what topics you will be discussing, so your audience is prepared for your arguments and will be able to follow along with you. The most important part of your introduction is your thesis statement, also known as your hypothesis. It tells the audience exactly what you'll be talking about or arguing throughout your presentation. The next part of your speech is the body. This usually consists of 3 to 5 main points that support your thesis statement or main argument. Make sure you balance your time on each point so you don't have one point overloaded and another point not even covered. Use outside sources to build your ideas, and make sure to always cite them. When moving from one point in your body to another, make sure it is clear that you are making that transition. Even saying something as simple as, now we will be talking about the conclusion, can make your transitions clear. Finally, let's move on to the conclusion. The conclusion is much like the conclusion that you would write at the end of a paper, plus a few extra verbal elements. Just like in a paper, you have a summary statement that tells your audience about everything you covered, and you also reference your introduction. When you end on the same note that you started on, it can help close the presentation very well. Also, remember to include any closing thoughts about what you've been talking about throughout the presentation. If you have any final thoughts about anything you talked about, make sure to include them. Always remember to say thank you at the end of the presentation. If you were giving a persuasive speech, you could also include a call to action in the conclusion. The call to action suggests something the audience can do in response to what the speaker has been arguing about. Now, I will be giving you some tips about the content of your speech. It's always important to keep word choice in mind. The audience responds best when your points are clear and concise. You don't want to make a whole story out of something that you could simply say in a sentence. It's also important to use appropriate language for your audience. If you are working with young children, you don't want to use highly technical words that most of them will not understand. Repetition is an important element of your speech. It can help you stress similar arguments throughout the presentation and remind the audience of major themes. You want to make sure that the audience walks away from your presentation knowing exactly what your major themes were. Now let's move on to verbal and nonverbal communication. I will be giving you speaking tips, telling you how to strategically pause, how to keep your face and eye contact in mind while you're presenting, along with your body movement and your general presentation of yourself. Some things to keep in mind when you are speaking are your enunciation. A great way to practice your enunciation is repeating the phrase, "Cookies are great. I can't believe how many cookies that I ate." It is also important to pace appropriately. You don't want to talk too fast and lose your audience. You also don't want to talk too slow, because then your audience will be bored and they won't listen to what you're saying. Vocal variety is also important when you're speaking. You don't want to talk in a monotone voice because no one will want to even listen to you for very long. When you're speaking, you also want to avoid vocal fillers. Words like like, I mean, you know. It happens to everyone. Recognize your own vocal fillers and work with a friend to help avoid using them during your presentation. One way you can avoid vocal fillers is strategic pausing. You can use it between your transitions to show that you're moving on from one topic to another. It can also be used as a dramatic effect if you have a dramatic statistic to show off. Strategic pausing can also allow the audience to keep up. You can pause between subpoints so the audience can stop and think about something, especially if it is a more complicated topic. It also gives rhythm to your speech because human speech naturally has pauses. When giving your speech, your facial expression and your eye contact with the audience can portray more than you think. Your facial expression communicates your attitudes towards the topic and the audience, any emotions that you're feeling, and your intentions behind giving the speech. Having good eye contact with the audience can help you engage and connect with them, monitor their mood. Monitoring their mood includes watching the audience to make sure everyone is following along with you, and it can help you pace appropriately. It also shows confidence that you know what you're talking about and you can look all of the audience members in the eyes. You can use your body movement, such as hand gestures, to emphasize main parts of your speech. You can gesture to a photo in your visual aids. Another part of nonverbal communication is your presentation of yourself. Remember, when you are standing in the front of the room, make sure you have good posture, you stand up straight, and you plant your feet. You don't want to lock your knees, because if you lock your knees, there is chance that you will pass out. And when you are presenting, you want to make sure you dress appropriately. It shows your credibility, and it also helps boost your confidence. Before you give your speech, it is always important to practice. Practicing can help you solidify your speech and catch any mistakes you have before you present. It could be any mistakes in your speaking notes, whether your papers are out of order, or any misspellings that you might have on your visual aids. Practice can also help you have a smoother final presentation. The more you practice, the more you are aware of your slide order and what you are going to say next. Practicing ultimately helps you raise your grade because you catch your mistakes beforehand and you also have a smoother final presentation. You can use the consultants at the Speaking Center as a practice audience. Now let's move on to how to present in a group. Here are some quick tips for presenting in groups. Make sure you all build the presentation together. You don't want to have a mix-up of various themes and templates. You want to make sure you have one uniform presentation. Choose which of you will present the presentation. Keep in mind that some requirements require each member of the group to speak for a certain amount of time. Make sure that you are able to meet all of the requirements before you choose just one or two group members to present. Plan ahead for just in case if any of your group members are not able to make your presentation. And whenever you are not speaking during the presentation, make sure you look at the speaker in your group. Make sure you all practice your presentation together at least once or twice before your final presentation. When doing a group presentation, here are some do's and don'ts. Do. Keep your formatting uniform. Make sure you are using the same theme throughout your presentation. Do. Play to your individual strengths. If you are more familiar with one topic over another topic, make sure you choose that topic. Also, avoid a disjointed presentation. You want to make sure you practice and that you transition well between each other and have great communication. When doing a group presentation, do not speak to others' research. If you do not know your group members' research, do not try to speak on it. Do not interrupt your fellow presenters. When you are standing in front of the class and you interrupt your groupmate while they're presenting, it shows that you are not communicating well with each other. When another member of your group is presenting, do not be distracting by playing with your hair or making faces at a friend in the audience. Make sure you just look at the speaker. There are 5 simple steps to have the best group presentation. Step 1 is orientation. Step 2 is the division of labor. Step 3 is assessment. Step 4 is presentation planning. And step 5 is the presentation. So what do these steps mean? Let's figure it out. Step 1, orientation. Just like orientation when you first came to the university, everyone is getting to know each other. In this part of the group presentation process, you want to make sure you all exchange names and contact information, such as phone numbers or emails. And also discuss the project requirements and make sure that everyone understands what the expectations are from the professor and also each other. Step 2 is the division of labor. The first part of this step is to divide the project into smaller parts. So if you have a 4-minute presentation, you could divide by topics, or each presenter could talk for a certain amount of time. It all depends on the requirements that are given to you by the professor. And it is also important that you agree on a few things with your group members. The timetable. When are you going to get everything done? Should you get things done within the next 2 weeks? And then also, who is responsible for each part? Who will be presenting the introduction? Who will be presenting the body? Who will be presenting what? And also, it is important to schedule meetings. While most groups might try to meet up 5 minutes before the presentation and get everything situated, it is important that you meet at least 2 or 3 times before your actual presentation to make sure everyone is on task and that you all have good communication with each other. The third step is assessment. Use one of those meetings to review any accomplishments you have made. Share with your group members what progress you have made on the speech, and also give feedback on each other's work. If you have any suggestions for what they could add or things that you are not really sure about, help them and let them know so that you guys can have a better product. At this point in time, you might also need to set new expectations or deadlines. If things are going well, you can make deadlines earlier, and if things are going not so well, you might have to push some things back and divide responsibilities differently. If one part of the assignment is proven to be more time-consuming than another, you could split the work and help one another out. Step 4 is presentation planning. Discuss with your group members how to orally present the material. Decide who is going to talk about each specific topic, and decide on whether you want audio-visual aids and which ones you want. Whether it is a presentation, a YouTube video to supplement your speech, or simply a poster. Make decisions on physical arrangements. Who will be standing where? Will someone be clicking the slides? Will there be a clicker? Always make sure to practice. Step 5 is the presentation itself. The primary speaker begins with the overview. Smooth transitions should be made between the speakers in order to make the presentation as uniform as possible. Each speaker previews their own portion of the presentation. So if you are each covering different topics, you can say, "Hello, I'm whoever, and I will be covering this, this, and this." And then the following speaker, when they have their topic, will be doing the same thing. And always remember to remain engaged when you are not speaking. Visual aids were mentioned in the last section when we were talking about group presentations. So what exactly are visual aids, and how can they help you support your speech? Let's begin with the purpose of a visual aid. A visual aid serves as a supplement to the presentation. It is not your entire presentation. If you want to make sure your visual aid does not have too much information, then you can practice your speech without the visual aid and see if it still makes sense. If it doesn't, then you might have to make some changes. Your visual aid also helps you emphasize the structure and main points of your speech. It should not include all of the details and evidence. The purpose of the visual aid is also to clearly display the information that you're trying to portray to your audience. Visual aids also help display powerful images, whether it is a map or a chart of data that you have been collecting. Some design mistakes to avoid. Too much information on the slides. Too much information can be overwhelming for the audience. It can also make you more likely to read off your slides. Another design mistake is inadequate visuals. You don't want to have visuals that are boring or do not serve any purpose in your presentation at all. Poor quality visuals is also a mistake to have. You don't want to have visuals that no one can really figure out what they are. You want to make sure you have clear images that are not blurry or grainy. Another design mistake is visual vomit. You don't want to have too much going on the screen at once. It is good to have some white space. You do not want text and images covering your entire visual aid. And also, lack of preparation is a design mistake to avoid. You want to make sure that all of your slides are prepared beforehand. You don't want to get to a slide in your speech and be like, "Oops, I forgot to finish that one." Now that we've discussed some mistakes to avoid, let's talk about tips for effective visual aids. It's always important to consider your audience when you are making your visual aids. Your theme and images that you use throughout your presentation should match the formality of your audience. If you are presenting to young children, you can have more informal images and fonts versus if you are presenting to a more formal crowd. Less is more with your visual aids. Like I mentioned earlier, white space is a good thing. You do not want to have a million pictures on one slide. It's also important to find quality images. You want to make sure that your images are clear and do not have watermarks all over them. Themes are important to use. It creates uniformity throughout the presentation, and it also can make your presentation stand out from others. Be creative with what themes you choose and what images you include in your presentation. Some helpful sites for beautiful themes and templates that can help you match any audience are Slides Carnival, SlidesGo, and Canva, along with many other websites that are not named here. Now that you know how to make your visual aids look beautiful, let's talk about how to deal with any nerves you might have before your presentation. Let's start off by talking about what communication apprehension is. Communication apprehension is an individual's level of fear or anxiety with either real or anticipated communication with another person or group of people. It is a really fancy way of saying stage fright or speech anxiety. There are many causes for communication apprehension. Some causes listed here are perceived judgment and evaluation. This is being worried about what others will think of you during your presentation. Being unprepared can make you more nervous to present your presentation because you are not as comfortable with the material as you would be if you practice or have all of your information ready beforehand. Also, focusing on the negative can cause communication apprehension. If you're worried that you will mess up, it will make you more nervous. And also any unique situation that you might be in that could cause you to be a little more anxious before your speech. Some things to remember about communication apprehension is that it happens to everybody. Even the best rock stars get nervous before performing on stage. Always remember you are your worst critic. No one will notice a subtle mistake that you made in your presentation except you. It's also important to remember that you can control your communication apprehension with confidence. Some ways to boost your confidence could be dressing up a little bit or making sure that you know your speech inside and out. Also, remember the audience wants to cheer you on. Just think, whenever you have a classmate presenting, you don't hope that their presentation is going to go badly. You hope that their presentation will go well and that they will be able to get their point across well. Some quick tips in dealing with communication apprehension is to put your nervousness into perspective and find a way to compose yourself. If you are nervous before a speech, run around a little bit to expel some of the energy, or move your arms around during the presentation using hand gestures to expel some of the energy as well. And just act confident. A common phrase that can be used in this situation is fake it till you make it. If you pretend that you're confident, then you will actually become confident after pretending to be confident after a while. And be thoroughly prepared, especially in your introduction, because usually after the first 60 seconds of the presentation, your nervousness kind of calms down and you're able to present at your most optimal level. So being prepared and practicing just maybe the first minute of your speech can really help you be in control of your nerves. Finally, let's cover how to virtually present to your class. When you're preparing to virtually present your presentation, always consider your environment. Make sure you are in a quiet space or a space that you can close off that is mostly silent. Notify those around you so there are minimal disruptions from family members or friends. Limit other noise as much as you possibly can. Some ways you could do this are shutting a door or kicking everyone out of your room. Check the audio and lighting before you present your presentation. You want to make sure that your microphone works. You want to make sure you have a fair amount of lighting on you for a video call. And also make sure you dress appropriately. If you're presenting a formal presentation and there is a video call, make sure that you are dressed formally for the occasion. Some tips for presenting via Zoom are to test your video and audio before you have your presentation. You want to make sure the video works and that you have a working microphone so your audience can hear you and see you. A way to show your audience your presentation is to share your screen. When you're sharing your screen, however, keep in mind that your audience can see your entire screen, so beware of any other tabs you might have open in your window browser. And also be prepared for technical difficulties. If one of your group members cannot connect due to internet connection issues or audio issues, make sure that you know what you can do to address the issue. Thank you for listening to this presentation. If you have any questions, contact us at spkc@umw.edu. Feel free to make an appointment with us to practice your group presentation. We would be happy to listen to your presentation via Zoom.